Hi, I'm Lucie Dawkins, the director of Mika Muaho's play Garage for the new Nordics Festival. Welcome to this online workshop about Finnish theatre from inside lockdown. As part of the research for this festival, I travelled to Helsinki to meet Mika and to learn more about Finnish theatre and culture. And today I'm going to share with you some of that research and some exercises that you could use in your own work. So, Finnish theatre has some crucial differences compared to the UK. Firstly, and most importantly, there is significantly more state funding for Finnish theatre, meaning that the major theatres can afford to have salaried, standing companies of actors and creatives in their buildings. I visited lots of the theatres in Helsinki, including the National Theatre, where Mika Muaho is artistic director, as well as Q-Teatteri and Theatre Virus, which had a core company of permanent actors, but also tended to be mixed together with contracts for freelancers, so there's always new voices and ideas coming through these buildings. The creative atmosphere in these theatres was extraordinary. Because of these permanent companies, the actors are co-leaders in programming and strategy decisions. I spent time there observing rehearsals, tech and downtime, and it was clear that the actors had a much more empowering role inside the Finnish theatre compared to the theatre ecology in the UK, with its constant freelancing contracts. So, for example, when I first met with Mika, he apologised that he was feeling a bit tired. He'd been up late into the night in the theatre's bar with the whole company, deciding the theatre's new digital marketing strategy together. And at the heart of the theatre building was a company canteen. So we sat drinking coffee, whilst actors, stage managers, directors, dramaturgs from the various plays in rehearsal came and sat down with us to chat and to check in with Mika and to say hello to me. Even down to putting a shared company space in the heart of the building. The theatre was built around a much more horizontal and democratic hierarchy, with an atmosphere of equal collaboration. And the same was true at Virus, where I met the relatively new artistic director, Jussi Sojanen. I asked him how he had gone about choosing his company of actors, and he looked at me with great surprise. No, he said, the actors had been the ones who had interviewed and chosen him. And at Q-Teatteri, I discovered that the actors chose the upcoming plays in the season in collaboration with the artistic director. And all of these things fundamentally changed the nature of rehearsal rooms, as actors are regarded as equal co-authors in the work. And for example, when Mika wrote Garage, it was for two actors in the company. He wrote around and in response to them, he added their personal lives into the characters, and he made their specific bodies and ages part of the physical life of the play. He told me about how he wrote alongside rehearsals, watching them develop the characters and writing new scenes or changing others according to the actor's input. So of course this is not unheard of in the UK, but this atmosphere was the norm rather than the exception in Helsinki. So another huge difference in Finnish theatre is the rehearsal time and resources available to companies. At Q-Teatteri, I sat in on tech rehearsals for a new play by writer and director Milja Sakola. They had been rehearsing at that point for 3 months together, in the actual theatre space, with the set being gradually built around them as they prepared. They were horrified by the idea of the standard British 4 to maximum 6 week long rehearsal period, and they pointed out that rehearsing in a different space and only moving into the set and theatre in the last week seemed counterproductive to making good work. I talked to the designer, who told me that the set had been developed in response to the rehearsals, rather than being decided beforehand, as we often have to do here in the UK. And as a result, design became a much more active part within the development of the production, as well as part of a collaboration with the actors. So, in general, Finnish theatre also has a reputation for being highly physical, with a tradition of actors putting their bodies into extreme, real physical exertion as part of the performance. So this idea is founded in the Helsinki's Theatre Academy. Now, Finland has quite a small population, and only really one major conservatory, so the vast majority of theatre makers have passed through the doors of the same academy, which means that 1 or 2 major practitioners or professors can influence a whole generation in Finnish theatre at one time. Actually, everyone I'd met on the trip had either taught or studied at this academy. So this feels very different to the atmosphere in the UK, where there's greater variation of conservatories, and there's also lots of ways of making a career in the theatre without having to train. And as a result, it's less feasible for one person to influence or affect the whole industry. So Finland's tendency towards a highly physical theatre actually comes from a particular director called Juko Turka, who left a huge imprint on a generation of students when he taught at this academy in the 1980s. He was inspired by Antonin Artaud, and he encouraged actors to perform shocking and extreme physical acts in their performance, which included Things like spitting, vomiting, defecating on stage, and putting their bodies into such levels of exertion to the point that they would be shaking. So whilst this level of extremity is not now normal, the performance of real physical task in which you can see the actors' bodies working, sweating, under strain, is still part of the fabric of Finnish theatre. So, for example, I saw a play by Ella Kahara at Teatteri Tukholma, which was set in a gym. And all the way through it, the actors were constantly running on treadmills, lifting weights and boxing as they delivered their lines. You could feel the breath going out of their lungs and see the sweat on their faces. Finnish theatre is also connected to a celebration of national identity. So there are two main languages in Finland, Finnish and Swedish, because for a long time Finland was under Swedish rule and it declared its independence in 1917. So historically, theatre in Finland is therefore rooted in working people and community performance as a celebration of Finnish identity and language in the face of Swedish rule. So many of the directors I met had the same phrase, that other European theatres are founded in an aristocratic court culture, whereas Finnish theatre is a theatre of the people. And today there are still distinct and separate Finnish and Swedish speaking theatres in Helsinki, but there's no longer such a stark cultural division between the two. So, for example, Theatre Virus is a Swedish language company, but Jussi Sojanen, the artistic director, is a Finnish native speaker. So, the first exercise is a challenge. How can we learn from Finnish theatre's much more egalitarian, horizontal power structures in their rehearsal rooms and empower the actors more as co-collaborators? So now, of course, there are some things that Finnish theatre have that are nearly impossible in the UK, sadly. We simply don't have the infrastructure for 3 to 6 months of rehearsal time, I wish we did, or standing companies of salaried actors, and the chance to rehearse on stage or in the set for weeks before tech starts. However, if we do think sideways a bit, it's possible to steal a few ideas and apply them to the structures we do have. So if you're a director or a producer, you don't always have to follow the traditions of how British rehearsal rooms are supposed to work. And we can take a bit of responsibility for taking practical steps to create a collaborative atmosphere. And if you are an actor, you can advocate kindly and positively for a more equal place in the rehearsal room. So, how do we go about doing this? Here are some thoughts for practical steps. As a producer, you can take steps to make sure that everyone is equally empowered at a contractual level, even in a freelance system. There's a very British attitude to sometimes feeling a bit queasy about talking about money, and we tend to silo conversations about contracts and practicalities from our creative process, as if we shouldn't muddy the artistic process. However, they are absolutely intertwined. It makes a huge difference if everybody knows what the terms of engagement are. Because the Finnish actors in the room are there as permanent employees and co-leaders of the building, they are hugely more empowered. There's many ways of doing this here in the UK, and each project will need a different solution. But one option, for example, might be that you could put all your creatives, from director to actor to writer to designer to stage managers, and in fact your own fee as a producer, on favoured nations contracts, and make sure that the whole company knows that this is the case. This means that everyone is paid exactly the same amount. You literally have equal value in the space. Whatever your approach, the first step is to examine these practical ingredients which create these hierarchies, and you can ask yourself which dominoes you can change or replace, which are going to influence the whole creative atmosphere, and it can be very simple. Our producers, Camilla Gertler and Charlotte Brown, did a great job at this in the new Nordics Festival. They made sure that all 6 productions were rehearsing in the same building, with a shared green room in the middle, and they were constantly present there, so that there was a sense of community between companies and the support was palpable from the moment we walked in the door in the morning. As a director, you can think about practical steps of setting up your process. So, for example, I was inspired by the Finnish system to set up my auditions differently. Rather than doing 10 to 15-minute slots and asking the actors to simply read, I chose 30 to 40-minute slots where we talked, we workshopped the scene with a reader, and we got to know each other's creative process and ways of thinking. It was my priority not just to find good actors for the parts, but to focus on a strong collaboration and horizontal hierarchy. So in other words, my challenge to you as a director is how can you audition not only for talent, but also for the working process? The two actors who took part, so I was amazingly lucky to have them, Duncan Duff and Michael Jen, were immediate standouts for their generous spirits and their hunger to take the creative reins in the collaboration. Without longer audition slots, I would not have had the chance to find that out. If the answer is, take a little bit more time, set up your audition room differently, or just ask different questions, there are tiny changes which can make a massive difference. Even avoiding sitting behind the barrier of a table makes a huge psychological difference to the whole room. I challenge you to look at the practical choices you are making and to think about how they influence the creative terms of engagement. And the same goes for the way that you setting up your rehearsal room. I mean, we might not be able to work in our sets for months before the first performance like the Finns can. However, you could work with your producer and designer to make sure that you have all your props and costumes in the room from day one, so that the actors have all the ingredients they need to cook with from the get-go. You could arrange rehearsal slots on the actual stage before tech, so the actors can get used to the real space and the dynamics of it before throwing them into it headlong. All it takes is just a little forethought and alternative planning. And once again, our producers and designer Niall McKeever were absolute champions at working out how to make this happen for our company. Even though we only had a 10-day rehearsal period, they got us a motorbike, an engine we could dismantle, and a spare rehearsal day in the yard itself, and they got all our props and our costumes into the room early. The challenge is, look at the resources you have and weaponise them in order to get the most potential out of them that you can. Don't just fall into habits of how you're supposed to go about rehearsing. There's always ways of hacking what you have. You can only ask the question. I also challenge you to set up your process to avoid slipping into the kind of hierarchies that we're really used to in the British theatre. And these can again be really small practical steps. So for example, at your first table read, look at what the table looks like. You can set up your table so that your designer, your stage manager and your actors are all mixed up together rather than in separate spaces, and invite the creative and management teams to read stage directions. So from the first moment, you're all working together as an equal set of collaborators. Once again, get rid of that director's table, any physical barriers between you and the rest of the company. And really, whatever level you're at as a director, you must make it your responsibility to know the names of everyone working on the show, whether it's the follow spot operator who's out of sight in the ceiling of the theatre to the wardrobe team. Make sure they get invited to the pub with everyone else. It's in your power to invigorate everyone and make them all feel part of the same collaborating team. Everything that you do, from arranging the space when you share notes to what tea breaks look like, influence the ecology of your space. Your exercise today is to sweat the small stuff. It sounds really simple, but it's really easy to overlook. So, this is my challenge to you. Look at the way that you set up your usual rehearsal process and see if there's just one practical ingredient you can change. Where the chairs are, how you start the day, how you end the day, which are going to have a knock-on effect on the creative hierarchy and the atmosphere. And it's often not about lowering the most traditionally powerful people at the top of the chain, but raising everyone up to the same playing field. So I had the chance to see some Finnish theatre on stage when I visited, and a real standout for me was an adaptation of Yuval Noah Harari's book *Sapiens* at the National Theatre, which was created by the physical theatre company Wow House. So Wow House is a collective focused on a really physical mode of storytelling, and it usually creates performance events and installations, as well as kind of traditional theatres on stages. So I was intrigued before the production as to how you could adapt a non-fiction book with like such scope for a stage production and also make it dramatically interesting to watch. So if you haven't read *Sapiens*, it's a book about the history of the human race from the first evolution from monkeys until today. So Wow House's approach was anything other than what I expected. They staged the whole book as a direct reading from the text, as if it was an audio guide for a museum panorama. And the company were wearing uncanny valley rubber masks as if they were like the models in the panorama, and created the panorama live in front of the audience. They kept on trying to fix the display until a new development in human history would crash in as a new section of the panorama, which was like sliding from the wings or coming bombing down from the flies. And over the course of the show, these developments, which were staged as invasions or destructions of the previous panorama, became more and more ludicrous and bigger, reflecting the destructive history of the human race. So the panorama started out as a single square platform of stand with a cut-out tree centre stage in this kind of big, vast, empty blackness. And it exploded over the course of 2 hours until it filled every inch of the stage in this glaring technicolor. All the text was in a voiceover, so the visual storytelling was all about the actors' bodies in increasingly fraught interactions with the panorama around them, as they literally hauled bits of set around or fought against it. And I could really see the echo of UK Turker's radical physical theatre in this show. One other thing that really impressed me in the performance was an app called Thea, which you can download for free, and in most Finnish theatres it provides subtitles in the language of your choice direct to your phone in the auditorium. It was a really simple, practical approach to accessibility. And accessibility is really key in Finnish theatres. There are very dedicated audiences, for example, at the National Theatre, and they often sell out even their largest auditoriums months in advance. But under Mika Muaho's leadership, there's a really thriving community programme bringing theatre out of the building into schools, prisons and care homes, and also inviting in community companies who are resident in the building itself. So it feels like the performance of theatre is really part of the social fabric in Helsinki. So the second exercise involves thinking about how you can insert some of this focus on physical task into your rehearsal room. Take any scene that you're working on and work out if there's any physical tasks underneath the text. Before you even start working on the words with the actors, explore these physical tasks first and find out how far you can push putting their body into real exertion or physical concentration. This element of real, non-mimetic, non-pretend task will often catalyse the scene. So if I was to take an example from Garage, which I was working on for the new Nordics Festival, in one scene, one of the characters, Ollie, is caught up by another character, Jack, in his beginner attempts at doing yoga. Before we even began work on the text, the actor, Duncan Duff, and I worked on a sequence of moves which were specifically taxing and difficult for his own level of flexibility and balance. And every time he got familiar with a pose, we would keep changing it up through rehearsals, so he never became expert in any of them. So throughout this particular scene, the actor was having to focus really hard on simply maintaining his balance, and he was actually putting his body into real, tiring work. So this real and not pretend effort and concentration, which he needed to do, revealed the dramatic heart of the scene, because in the text he's giving short and distant answers to Jack, who at this moment was feeling really vulnerable and was really in need of his friend's help. And this failure, this breakdown in communication, ends up erupting into an argument. And putting the actor into a live, distracting physical task turned out to be the active ingredient for creating this miscommunication. It put the stress on the scenario, which is what this scene needed. However, in other scenes, this real physical task also became a catalyst for intimacy between the characters. So in this play, the two characters are in the process of stripping down an engine together. So we made sure we had an engine in a rehearsal room which they could actually strip down. Again, one of the very first things we did in rehearsal was to work out how to do the real mechanical tasks of stripping, cleaning and reinserting bolts and engine covers and drive belts. And this included things like handling WD-40, tools, vinegar, dirt, rags, putting on rubber gloves. And we actually went to a real working garage at the beginning of rehearsals to learn all of this from an actual car mechanic. And when it came to exploring the text, the actors already had this language and palette of physical tools to work with. And so we used moments of them grappling tasks together as actually a way of them finding a gruff intimacy. Or sometimes they could let the other one know they were really pissed off because of how aggressively they were tackling this task. So layers of subtext started appearing out of the way they applied themselves to muscular, real activities. And the actors then, for themselves, began to find places to use this real physical language. So I can think of an example where the actor Michael Jen has a moment in which his character Jack was overwhelmed with a feeling of nausea. And what he ended up doing was swilling out a mug of cold coffee that was left over from a tea break and spitting it out all over the floor. So instead of imagining the sensations around wanting to vomit and trying to replicate them in his body, he actually put his body through real physical experience, and this electrified the scene. So my exercise for you is a very simple one. Go through your text that you're working on and list all the physical tasks described or suggested in the writing. It could be peeling potatoes or mixing a cocktail, or hanging out the washing to dry, or even just making a cup of tea. and take the proper time with your actors to research these tasks in their bodies. And crucially, make them real interactions which require bodily concentration and effort. And do this before you put the words on top of them, because this effort sometimes is at odds with the text, and it creates a delicious second layer of conflict in the scene, which is absolutely tangibly real to watch for the audience, and can sometimes spark off the scene itself. So, to sum up, it's been a fascinating experience to learn from Finnish theatre. My big takeaways from my week in Helsinki is the provocation to think about what I can practically do to create a more nourishing and collaborative environment for my companies, even though we don't have the same kind of infrastructure in British theatre. This seems to me to be really important right now, when this enforced hiatus and pressure from the lockdown means that we really need to think about how we're going to be rebuilding infrastructures from the ground up again when the industry restarts. It seems like a perfect moment for all of us to take responsibility for thinking about how we're going to make a change in our practice. And I certainly want to steal the ingredients from Finnish theatre's democratic theatre-making atmosphere. It takes a bit of practical thinking, a bit of thinking outside the box, and a little bit of elbow grease, but there really are changes that we can make. It was also really refreshing to find such a generous collaboration in Mika Muuaho and his translator Eva Buchwald, who is also the dramaturg on the original production. So from the very beginning, they actively welcomed my and the company's input in tweaking and playing with the translated script in order to make it fit a UK performance context specifically. So part of this was to do with the fact that spoken Finnish is very standardised across classes, which is obviously very different here. Because the play is partly about class divisions, our task was to make the language specific to the two different characters, both in the way that we work with accents, but also in the different kinds of vocabulary that they use. Mika automatically and immediately empowered me to make suggestions, and welcoming a really open collaboration. This was really thrilling as a starting point for the play. Another big takeaway is the encouragement to look beyond the text and into the physical life of the play. So we tend to be really wedded to the spoken word in British theatre, and so seeing a context where words and text were only one of many, many ingredients was really inspiring. I also think that the way that the Finns set up the working architecture of their theatre spaces was amazingly effective. So few theatres in the UK have an open plan common area where everybody in the building meets frequently within the working day, and it honestly changes the working environment profoundly. It was one of those dominoes which can have a huge effect. So, I hope you enjoyed this workshop and that it's given you a few things to think about and hopefully sparked an interest in Finnish theatre. We really are hoping that this new Nordics Festival is going to be back in full force after the lockdown finishes, and so that we can share all of these great new scripts with you. We'd really like to show you Mika Muuaho's garage. There's loads and loads of resources, rehearsal photos, and also documentation on Cut the Chord's website. So if you want to find out more, you can find it there. And until then, stay safe.